Zach again at newtotorah.com. Want to come into a video for you today. We are going to be talking about community this time, and this is something that's come up a lot over the last couple of years. And recently, when I went to San Diego, I was requested to go there and talk about some different things about Torah. I asked them, some of the people who were there organizing the event, what would you want me to talk on? And one of the things that was mentioned was community. Because this is something that comes up a lot amongst believers, Hebrew believers, and people who are really trying to seek fellowship with others who think, likewise, especially on biblical, issues. And so I said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And so I had a couple of other topics planned, but I incorporated that into one of my talks that was there when I was there. And it went really well. And so, and there were some people there, who came out, and I got to meet a lot of folks, and it was a big interest. That was one of the most crowded talks that I gave, was about community, because there are so many people who are interested in the topic. And let's just go ahead and get into the talk I gave, the PowerPoint, and we'll just go through a number of things, because there's a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of people who are very interested in living and forming a community with like-minded individuals when it comes to the Hebrew roots or Torah, and I think that's a good desire. It's a good desire, but I want to make sure that people do it right, do it the right way. And so let's just go ahead and get into it. Starting off with my PowerPoint, basically, let's just go ahead and define community. A social group of any size whose members reside in a specific locality, share a government, and often a common cultural and historical heritage. So just right off the bat, this is a social group. That's, that's a lot of people, people whose members reside in a specific locality. So you're all in one location. And you share a government. That government is Torah. That's the Torah. That's the government we go by. And often have a common cultural and historical heritage. Yeah, we have a common cultural because we all do the same things. We celebrate the same feasts, same holidays. And our historical heritage is that of Israel, our Hebrew heritage. And so that's people who are, who share some of those things, and they want to form a community. And so any community, the definition from dictionary.com is that right there. So, okay, let's go ahead and move on. So community, when it comes to building a community, there are right ways to build a community and there are wrong ways to build a community. And right off the bat, there are a lot of people who start forming ideas about community that are the wrong ideas. And, so we're going to talk about some of those here and dispel some of the myths that are out there and look at some positive, good ways to build community versus the wrong ways. Feast days. So usually when the feast days come around, Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, people get together, the Feast of Sukkot especially, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the Fall Feast. People come together, and this is what brings up this topic. We love the fellowship. We love studying the Word. We love getting around the campfire and around the Passover table and just talking about, enjoying the fellowship that we get. Because you know what? When we do that, we can let our guard down. It's amazing that, how much you realize your guard is up when you go out into the community and you go out, the regular world, and your kids are interacting with people, of the regular world, and how much your guard is up, because you're always concerned about, who your kids are talking to, what influences are being, put upon them from other kids whose parents don't think the same way we do, what they're eating. You always have to have your guard about what food they're putting in their mouth and what food you're putting in your mouth. And it just, all the things of the world, the media, just all of the stuff that's bombarding you constantly. And really, it's just a world of sin. And so your guard is constantly up. But when you get around like-minded believers, either at Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, or Passover, or Shavuot, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, any of these times, these appointed times, you can let your guard down. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's amazing that, I feel free. I don't have to worry about who my kids are talking to, because they're talking to other homeschool kids, either from, who have parents who think the same way we do. And, we're all trying to have safeguards, and we have this same set of standards, which is Torah. And so it feels good that I can let my guard down a little bit. And you begin to think to yourself, this provides a lot of opportunities for us to do this all the time, And so the topic inevitably comes to, how can we do this all the time? How can we have this? I want this. And so the questions start getting asked. How do we do this? How can we manage this all the time for our families? And so the questions begin. Where will we build this community? Let's have a community. Where are we going to build it? Well, how are we going to buy the land? Who's going to own the land? How are we going to make a living? we got to have money. There's still car insurance. We got to buy gas. We got to buy for the cars. There's certain things we need. How do we do that? What are the legal requirements, if any? And there's so many, many others. But the questions start to begin to be asked, and really this is when we start to come up with answers, and this is often where the mistakes begin to be made. Okay, because you try to find, what other people are doing, or you come up with the most easiest of answers, where really they're not that easy, and they're actually very difficult, and they have some of the most harsh repercussions with some of these answers. But this is when the mistakes usually begin to be made. So, common mistakes. We can share ownership of the land. We can all go and buy some land together, and it'll just be all of ours. We'll just all share it. Or we can form a legal trust. We'll just form a trust, some sort of trust company under some company name, and it'll be a trust, and we'll just put everybody's name. All the men will have their name on the trust. Or we can share money. We'll just put all of our money in the bank. We'll cash out of everything. We'll sell everything we have, and we'll just put all the money in one big pot, and we'll just share it. And we can share all of our possessions. We'll just share, hey, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, and, no man will have need, right? So, we'll just share all of our possessions, what's yours is mine, mi casa, su casa. It's all in one pot, and we'll just do that. These are mistakes, folks. Common mistakes. I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to show you why in Scripture. But Zach, sharing is good. Sharing is good, Zach. We all know shit. We've been taught that from the very beginning of our childhood, getting our kids to share with one another. And they say, what about the verses in Acts? What about the verses in Acts, Zach, and the beginning of Acts where it says that no man had need? All those verses, where it says they all shared. We're going to take a look at those verses. We're going to take a look at those verses now, and we're going to go through and why those verses are being taken out of context, and absolutely why it's against Torah. It's absolutely against Torah. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's look at these verses. Acts chapter 2, verse 41. And then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, and in breaking of bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men as every man had need. See, Zach, they held all things in common. They shared everything and lived in communities. This is what we obviously need to do. Okay, let's keep reading. Acts chapter 4, verse 32. And the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things common. And with great power gave the apostles witness of the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was upon them all. Neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the prices of the things that were sold, and laid them down at the apostles' feet, and distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. And Joseph, who was by the apostles, was surnamed Barnabas, which was, being interpreted, the son of consolation, a Levite, and of the country of Cyprus. Having land, sold it, and brought the money, and laid it at the apostles' feet. Okay, Zach, that really looks like we should be selling everything and living in a commune with other believers. I mean, it looks to me, that's how it reads, Zach. There's no doubt about it, Zach. We should be doing this. That really looks like we should be living in community and using the money of all of our sold possessions to provide for our brothers and sisters. Right? Wrong. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. If that is the case, we have a major contradiction in Torah. A major contradiction. So we need to figure out, what's going on here. Because it's my personal belief that the Bible does not contradict itself. And I have proven time and time again, even on this channel with certain topics, that there are no contradictions in the Bible. And so if this is a contradiction, we have a serious problem here. I'm going to submit to you that this is not a contradiction. There is an issue with people's interpretation and their application. You will never find anywhere in Torah where it says to hold all things in common. You will not see it. You will never see anywhere in Torah where it says to sell all of your possessions and bring them to your leaders, prophets, elders, pastors, or even Levites. In fact, the verses we just read, there was a Levite who sold land and brought the money to the apostles. You see, Levites were supposed to be cared for by the rest of the community. Deuteronomy 14:25-29 and many other places state that. So do we have a major contradiction here, or is there some misinterpreting? Are there some who are misinterpreting these verses to the benefit of themselves? I would suggest the latter. Absolutely. The Torah has commandments that pertain to personal property ownership. Here are just a few of them. Just a few of them. Let's go through a few. Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord thy God gives thee to possess it. You see, when it says you should not move your neighbor's landmark, I will submit to you that that's telling you that both you and the neighbor have a landmark, have a boundary marker. When it says do not remove your boundary marker, it's telling you, it should be telling your common sense that both you and your neighbor have a boundary marker. You and your neighbor own land. Okay, so this is absolutely pertaining to property ownership. Okay, it's not telling you to sell your property and give it to a pastor to manage. It's not saying, hey, the pastors in the community shouldn't move the boundary markers. No. It's saying that you, the neighbor, people had land ownership. They owned things. They owned property. You were allowed to own property in your inheritance. Every clan, every tribe was given a certain boundary where that inheritance was to be divided up amongst the clans and tribes of the certain tribes of Israel. And that was yours. It was your family's land. And once those boundary markers were set according to your family, they were not to be moved. But see, it was your land. Your land. Let's go on. And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field, neither shall you gather the gleanings of thy harvest. You see, when it says you shall not reap the corners of your field, that should tell you that you have a field. It's your field. The corners were meant for the strangers and the poor, the widows and the poor to come and glean off of. You weren't to take that. That was for them. But that tells you that if you have it, you can own a field. You're allowed ownership of property. Let's continue. Neither shall you desire your neighbor's wife, neither shall you covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. Again, another verse directly talking about property ownership that is very clear, gives very clear indication that you are allowed to own property. Your field, your manservant, your maidservant, your ox, your donkey, whatever, all of these things can be property, and you are not allowed to covet. Now, a wife's not property, but you know what I'm saying. You're not allowed to covet that which is your neighbor's. Meaning that you are allowed to own things, and your neighbor is not allowed to covet them. Simple. This is property ownership in Torah. You are allowed to own things. You're allowed to have things. You're not supposed to give them away to an elder or a pastor or a shepherd or a king or Levite and have them manage it for you. That's not Torah. You don't see it in Torah. So, is there a contradiction between the new and the old? Are the people of Acts living differently than before? I would submit not. I would submit they're not living differently than before. When you read Acts 4:34, it says, neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the prices of the things that were sold. Many of us, when we first realized, Torah, we first understood Torah, we first began to understood what the sacrifice of our Messiah really indeed was, and the price that was paid, and just how much we are fallen, in turn how much of a sinner I truly am. It's amazing to realize the sacrifice that he gave for me, that he gave for his bride, his northern kingdom, Israel. He says, I am not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. We understand the transaction that took place there. We were amazed. And when we truly realized that we should be loving God and loving our neighbor, and those are the two most commandments, nothing else in this world matters. And so many of us began to sell all the things we didn't need, sell the material items of the world, sell the idols in our lives, or smash the idols in our lives, and get rid of them. Either get rid of extra clothes, get rid of extra cars, get rid of extra houses. What does it really matter that I have 3 houses when, I could be taking that money and giving it to other believers who have need? It doesn't mean I go homeless. But, which when you truly see the treasure in the field, you'll go back, sell everything to get that treasure because it's so important to you. That's what you see these people in Acts doing. Let me give an example. Let me give you an example. Everyone knows who this woman is. I mean, can anyone guess how many houses this woman, Oprah, owns? You want to guess? Well, we'll take a look. Montecito, California. Lalevette, New Jersey. She owns an apartment, a very nice apartment in Chicago. She owns a mansion in Fisher Island. She owns a mansion in Telluride, Colorado, Maui, Hawaii, and Antigua in the Caribbean. She owns a lot of mansions, a lot of houses, a lot of property. She has a lot of assets. Now imagine someone like Oprah who truly gets and understands the gospel, who truly understands that the gospel, what the kingdom of heaven is really like. Do you think she's going to keep this stuff? Do you think she's really going to revel in her material possessions of this world? Or does she really all of a sudden start to care about the things that are not of this world? Does she care about the poor, the widow, and the orphans, and sell everything she has to give to them, to help God's people, to help people who are lack, to love her neighbor? To see, that's what the true gospel really will do to a person. It doesn't mean they go homeless. It doesn't mean they sell everything they have. It means that they go out and they see all the things that they really invested beforehand in the material world and get rid of that stuff because it doesn't matter anymore. What doth it profit me? Let's just speculate for a moment that Oprah receives the grace and knowledge of the Messiah and access to the kingdom of heaven. I know it's a stretch, but let's just go there for a second. What is the kingdom of heaven like? Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hidden in a field, the which when a man has found it, he hides it. For joy thereof goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Because nothing else matters in this world anymore. It only matters that I love God and I love my neighbor. It doesn't mean I go homeless. It doesn't mean I go hungry. It doesn't mean I give, the rabbi in town everything I own and let him figure out where it's best spent. It doesn't say that. I will submit to you that the people in Acts were not selling everything they had and going homeless or possessionless. They were selling their extra wealth and giving to the poor and their brothers and sisters so that they did not have any need. They saw the poor among them, and they saw all this wealth that they had, all these material possessions that they had. And many of them who had these things were like, why should I have this anymore when my brother has need? I'll sell this and give you what you need. Give you a new car or a new ox cart, or whatever you need. I'll provide that for you. And yeah, they held all things in common, which simply means they shared with one another. But see, there are rules with sharing your possessions in Torah, because they are possessions. There's rules with sharing. Let's read about some of them. And if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it be hurt or die, the owner thereof, being not with it, he shall surely make it good. Folks, that means if you come over and you borrow my ox cart, and you take it home with you, and the wheel falls off, you bring it back with the wheel attached. You make it good. You fix it. Now, there's rules too. If I go with you and it breaks, then it's on me. I was there. I was present. But in today's world, if you come over and you borrow my chainsaw and you break it, you don't return it to me broken. You fix it and then give it back. You see, the reason is because it's mine. And if you borrow something from me, you fix it and you make it good if you break it. It's that simple. There are rules with sharing possessions, ladies and gentlemen. There are rules, because the reason why is because you're allowed to own things according to Torah. You're allowed to possess things. And when these communities are being started, they're going into this pool where we throw everything in a common pool. We'll share all things. We'll hold all things in common. And we're going to form an Acts or an all-in community. These things are not Torah. It's just not. And that way of thinking is actually communism. We'll get into that a little bit later. And Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, Behold, Lord, half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold. Well, notice a couple things here. Number one, he restores them fourfold from people he stole from, which is exactly what Torah commands him to do. And also, he says, here and now, Lord, I sell half of all of my goods. Half. He's not going homeless. He's not going to the local rabbi, the local pastor, and saying, here's all of my possessions. Do with it as you will, and I'll just, live here and eat the crumbs off your table. No, he's not saying that. That's not in Torah. And that's not what Zacchaeus did. And what did our Messiah say? And Yeshua said unto him, this day is salvation come to this house, for so much as he also is the son of Abraham. Today, this day, salvation has come to this house. Amazing. Amazing. Avoid plans. I'm telling you right now, folks, avoid plans to join or start what is called an all-in or an Acts community. It's not Torah. These communities usually have one head that controls, or usually a group of heads or one head that controls all property and assets. This is not scriptural. It's not biblical. It's not Torah. It's communism. These communities usually will have one thing in common. I mean, you go back and you used to do some research. I've been doing research over the last year or so about these different communities. And whether they're pagan, whether they're Christian, whether they're Hebrew roots or Torah, they all seem to have one thing in common. All of them. Every single one of them. And that is this. These communities have very high turnover rates. Very high turnover. They all have that one thing in common. High turnover. Why? Why do they have high turnover? Well, I started to explore that. And I've come up with what I believe is the answer. Let's go ahead and read this. The year was 1607. The first 104 settlers had arrived from Europe in Jamestown in the Virginia Tidewater region of the U.S. in May. They found soil which was fertile beyond what they had seen in the lands which they had left. The fruits were abundant. Wild game such as deer and turkey were everywhere. There was no shortage of fish and other seafood. And yet, within 6 months, 66 of the original Jamestown, Virginia settlers had died. Only 38 had survived. Another 500 settlers were again sent to settle in Virginia in 1609. And within 6 months, 440 of these too died by starvation and disease. This was called the starving time. How could this be? How could there be so much death and starvation amidst so much plenty of meat, fruits, and fish? The fault, as the witness said, lay not in the barrenness and defect of the country, but in the want of providence, industry, and government. What caused this lack of industry? Were the Virginian settlers just lazy and indolent? It could not be. People who were sent there were the chosen ones, the very best of men. The problem was that all of the men who were sent were bonded laborers. They had no stake in what they produced. They were bound by contract to put all they produced in a common pool to be used to support their colony as a whole. This was communism in its purest form. Everyone was required to work according to ability and take according to need. And so, as so frequently happens with present-day government policies, the results were the opposite of what was intended. Since hard work was not personally beneficial for the settlers, they responded by stopping work. Philip A. Bruce, a late 19th century U.S. historian, wrote of the Jamestown immigrants. The settlers did not even have a modified interest in the soil. Everything produced by them went into the store in which they had no proprietorship. The result, as Bruce wrote, would be what anyone who has any knowledge of human nature would expect. Men, even the most energetic, refused to work. Jamestown changed course just 2 years later, in 1611, with the arrival of the High Marshal, Sir Thomas Dale, from the United Kingdom. He understood the problem, and he freed the settlers by abrogating, that means getting rid of, communal ownership. Each man received 3 acres of land, and other than a lump sum tax of 2.5 barrels of corn, did not have to contribute anything to the common pool. The colony immediately began to prosper. It prospered because each individual directly benefited by his labor and knew that he alone would bear the full consequences of any reduction in output. Private ownership worked. Communistic communities don't work because it destroys the reward and work nexus. Communistic communities don't work because the absence of property rights heralds the end of all incentive to produce. It's as simple as that, folks. Folks, if you take away the personal liberty of a person and you make them put everything they earn in a common pool and don't reward them personally for their labor and for their efforts, they'll stop working. It's as simple as that. Why should I keep working when I'm not personally being rewarded for this and I see no end in sight of that system? I want to work and be rewarded for my personal efforts because you know what? Amongst the workforce, there are people who excel and some people who don't. And the ones who excel should be rewarded for their excellence. And if they're not, they stop excelling. They stop working as hard. It's that simple. If they see people getting rewarded for the same, getting the same reward for less or more work, it ruins incentive. And people just stop working. Today, these type of communities who do this, okay, folks, have high turnover because people who are dissatisfied can simply go somewhere else. That is why in many true communist countries, you're not allowed to leave. For example, previously in the Soviet Union, when that was still in effect, you couldn't leave the Soviet Union. There's all these stories about during the Olympics when Soviet Union Olympians would try to defect during the Olympics. And they had guards around them all the time. Because these were bright, intelligent individuals who excelled, and they knew that other countries were free, and this was my opportunity to defect. And indeed, there were some defections, and the Soviet Union and Communist China protected their athletes with guards to make sure they didn't defect during those times. And in those countries, it's only recently that you're now allowed to leave those countries, and it's more of a westernized, democratic, or capitalist society where you can leave if you want. But that's still true today in Burma, in North Korea, and Cuba. You're not allowed to leave. Nobody wants to stay in a communist society. Nobody wants to stay in a place where I can't be personally benefited from my excellent work. You don't want to stay. And so people try to leave, and you're not allowed to. But back in 1609, where could they go? You couldn't just get back on the ship and head back to the United Kingdom or go to Spain or go to Argentina or go somewhere else. You couldn't do that. You're stuck. And so you just starve to death. But see, today, that's why these communities, these all-in communities or axe communities, it's why they have high turnover. Because you can go. If you feel frustrated with the community, you feel frustrated with the government or how things are turning out or how your lifestyle is working or how, there's a double standard or whatever's going on, you can leave. You just get your stuff and leave. But see, you end up losing a whole bunch of stuff you invested in that community, the time, the money you put in, because they're making you turn over everything you have to the community, to the good of the community, and they're selling it and buying it and using it wherever they want. And a lot of times you can't take that stuff with you, and you can't take the stuff with you that you've built there. So you just leave, and you leave poorer than when you came. But you can leave. You don't starve to death. But unlike the communist countries where you can't leave, you can leave. Let's keep going. So, people are like, what if we do a trust? What if we do a trust and we'll organize a trust where we have these certain safeguards put in place, and we'll try to we see the whole problem with the all-in or the communistic way of government. So we'll do a trust community where we all have ownership, private ownership. Folks, if you put a bunch of people who aren't family into a trust, let's just say 4 or 5 families into a trust, and there's something that goes south during the time, you imagine you have a legal trust. It's a bad idea. Why? Why is this a bad idea? A trust community, there will always be differences between people. While a trust will most often be okay for a family, encouraging others to join presents potential legal issues. Joining a trust requires that all parties are now liable for taxes. So let's just say we have a trust and we're going to take on a new family. We're going to put them in the trust. I formed the trust. Now that person I just brought in is now liable for all the taxes for that community, for that property, for that, for everything that's on that property. And property taxes, you're now going to pay taxes, and it's due upon being put on the trust. It's due ASAP. Now, it differs in different states depending on what state you're from. But there's a whole lot of legal, hurdles you got to jump through when it comes to trust based on what state you live in. And the more, the more bureaucratic the state, the worse it's going to be. But there's all kinds of problems with that. Should there ever be a split, a trust between non-family can be a legal nightmare. I mean, a trust between family might have its own, landmines already, but a trust between non-family people and multiple people who aren't family, that's a legal nightmare. And the lawyers and the money you're going to have to pay a lawyer to get it all taken care of is going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. Absolutely. I do not agree with the trust. Should one of the trustee grantors die, a remaining family cannot be named in a trust, and there is no guarantee of one being named as a successor or a trustee, a grantor. They can be forced out. So let me give you an example. Let's just say that there is a trust between 4 families, and the husband of one of those families dies. Well, see, it's the men who are on the trust. They put the men on the trust, and a man died, and now the wife, that family, is no longer on the trust because the grantor is dead. See, the wife's not on the family. And according to the state laws, you can't, there's no will. You can't just will my family, now my wife being on the name. No, she's not on there. She's not named as a grantor. And let's just say the community, the other 4 people didn't really like the wife, and they don't really want her on, the trust name of the family. So eventually that family whose husband has died can be forced out of the trust or even forced out of the community. You have no legal right now to be here. That's a major issue. Especially since maybe that family has put in thousands and thousands of dollars and spent time, blood, sweat, and tears into the forming and building of that community. And now because the husband dies because of accident or heart attack or whatever, now you have no legal right to that community, nor does your offspring. So what do? It's a nightmare. Trust do not work. Don't go down the road of trust. There's a whole bunch of other issues with that too, but just for simple, keeping it simple, there's a few. A trust community. A trust may sound good, like a good plan at first, but it's laden with problems down the road when it's actually implemented. Communal eating arrangements. This is one of the big reasons that people have big issues that people have at communities. When I was doing research on communities, not to mention my own experience, but going back and researching other communities and finding the ones that have communal eating arrangements, this seemed to be like, and talking to people who had left communities who had communal eating arrangements, this seemed to be the same thing over and over again. This was a big issue with people. We like the idea of community worship and fellowship, and that leads some to come to the idea that eating all of our meals together would be just great. I mean, we get together for Sukkot and unleavened bread, and we get to eat these meals together, and we're doing some camping, and we're fellowshipping and worship, and we're eating these meals together, having potlucks. And it's so good. It's so wonderful. We like that. We love this break and from the norm of our daily lives. And we think, wow, this would be great to do this all the time. We would just love to have all of our meals together. No, folks, no. So going out and talking and researching what some people said on the internet from people who lived in, and I have my own experience with this, who ate in a communal setting, it was filled with nightmares. I mean, and there's some major examples I'll get to in a second here. So let me ask you this. Let's just begin this way. So you're going to spend all day working together, studying the Bible together, worshiping together, and now you're going to eat all your meals together? People need space, folks. They need alone time. This is one of the biggest issues at communities that cause division. One of the biggest. And when I was researching it, it's one of the things I saw over and over again. So, I have this relationship with my wife. And, and I have this commitment with her. And, it's for better or for worse, richer for poor, in sickness and in health. And, when we argue, as I'm sure you and your spouse argue from time to time, and you have differences, you work that out because you have a lifelong commitment to that person. But see, I don't have a lifelong commitment with you. And we're going to have issues when we spend all the time together, all of our days and nights and, eating arrangements and all these things together, all this time together. We're going to have problems. Problems are going to arise. There's going to be times where you rub me the wrong way, I'm going to rub you the wrong way, and we're going to have issues. And there's going to be conflict. You're going to not agree with me from certain things, and it's just going to build and build and build, and there's going to be conflict. But because I don't have that commitment to you, better for worse, sickness and health, better for worse, richer for poor, I don't have that commitment with you. I'm not going to take the same efforts to make it right with you as I will with my wife. I'm just going to leave once it gets too ahead. It's just not going to go well. And that's what a majority of these communities report. And the communal eating arrangements is one of the times when families need to be by themselves. Proverbs 25:17, withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. Because, folks, see, if you spend too much time with other people, and too much time imposing yourself on another family, there's going to be problems. There's problems just with a husband and wife spending too much time together. So don't you think there's going to be a problem when you have all these families spending all this time together? Absolutely there is. And the results, the stats speak for themselves when you go out and you research these communities and the people who've left them. Absolutely. Dinner time and meals are a great time for the immediate family to sit together and talk and visit without having to put on a face for others around them. If you're constantly around others and can't have alone time eating with your spouse and family, there's going to be problems in your household. I don't care who you are, but when you go out amongst other people, you're putting on a face. You are. You're going to put on a face, and they're going to see what you want them to see of you and your family. How many times have you, when you were going to church, did you and your wife maybe get in an argument or get stressed out because the kids were running behind, were late to church, and you're arguing in the car, and by the time you get to church, you walk to the door and, whoosh, hi, how you doing? Good to see you this morning. Good to see you. But you got this smile on your face. It's a face that you've put on, for that crowd. And I don't care who you are, but whenever you come amongst a crowd of people, you're going to put on a face. And you're going to try to keep that face on as long as you can. And for some people, it's longer than others. But if you don't get alone time with your family, if you can't go back and take that face off and just be who you are and just let it be one with your family and talk to your children and have this alone time where you can be with your kids and your wife, it's going to cause problems. It's going to really cause problems. And I hope that's resonating with you because I think most of you know what I'm talking about. Let me give you another example. People have very different eating requirements. Many people only like certain things, and this is going to cause problems. So for instance, if someone likes salted butter and someone else only likes unsalted butter, well, how do you cook with eating arrangements? Community eating arrangements. So we're going to have spaghetti tonight, and we're going to have garlic bread, and, I like using unsalted butter, and such likes using salted butter, and, because, I have high blood pressure issues, and I can't use salted butter, and I don't think we should use salted butter. It's unhealthy for you, but such and such thinks it's perfectly fine, and I like salted butter, blah, blah, blah. And so this causes issues when you only have a shared meal between the entire community, because, I don't like such and such person's cooking. I like my cooking. But now such and such has been put in charge of the cooking and she's cooking all the meals. Well, then what do? You just suck it up. And that causes friction. That causes problems. It builds. And from the research I did from all these other communities, it builds and it causes problems. And so, another example too is fasting and cleansing are big things for Torah believers. We spent all these years eating all this garbage, things that we thought were okay, and then realizing that we're eating all this unclean food and all this even processed food that's full of unclean things and chemicals and preservatives and things that we just like to get out of our body, and we have a lot of health issues. And because of that, there are a lot of people in the Torah community who push fasting and cleansing, which are good things. I totally agree with that, and we do that here. So if I'm fasting and cleansing myself, that requires a different diet. For instance, Daniel fast. Daniel fast is a really it's a very popular fast amongst people who are Hebrew roots or Torah or whatever, or Messianic. And they're doing that a lot today. And so, but that requires a different diet for me than it requires for you. So now I'm in this community, and I really want to do this because of my health issues. I feel I have these health issues, and I want to do this, but now it requires a different diet. You think that the community is going to be like, oh yeah, well, such and such, she requires a different diet, so we're just going to go ahead and she can have a different dish than everybody else. No, that doesn't work that way. You can end up having 50 people, in your community who all have different diets. How are you going to cook for that community? Everyone's going to have their own meals. Folks, you might as well just go home and have your own dinners by your family, what you want to eat. There are so many problems that arise from this. I don't like the way she cooks. I don't like the way he cooks. I don't like the ingredients you're using. You're using MSG. You're using corn syrup in your ingredients. I'm on a certain fast. I want to do a Daniel fast. I want to do this cleanse or that cleanse. There are so many problems with that. You won't find anywhere in Torah where it tells you that we should all have our meals together. And anyone who's telling you we're going to eat all our meals together, you're having major issues. You're going to have major issues there. You're going to have problems. That's fine. Go ahead and keep doing that. See how that works out for you. Money. The sharing of money is a hot topic. Okay, so there are people who sit on the campfire and they begin to, talk about money. How are we going to share the money? And somebody's like, you know what? I would love to do this. I just can't afford to leave. I have bills I have to pay. I can't afford. I have my house payment. I have some, credit card debt or whatever. How am I going to do this? And someone steps in and says, well, you know what? I'll pay your way. We'll just support you for a while, or we'll do this for a while. And I know you don't have any money, but we'll help you out. And that's that can go south so many ways. Speaking from experience, that can go south so many ways. Well, let's just say you have a community and everyone's putting into the pot. Who's going to be the big earner? Let's just say I'm going to a job and I'm providing the majority of the income for the community. And it's a good job and I'm getting paid well. And such really isn't working. He can't get a job. He's on the community, and he's eating and taking in the same amount of stuff that my family is, and maybe even more. Now, it's going to be an issue of contention real quick, because you're taking from the larder and you're not putting anything in. And not only that, but you're not really working around the community. You're kind of laying around, and you were really gun-ho at first, but now you're not, and you're not out. The garden needs weeding, and you got to do this, and you're not putting forth you're sleeping late, whatever. And now that's a big issue. How are we going to deal with this? Because you're not pulling your weight around here, and we've signed, God forbid, a legal trust where you're in it now, or we've bought this land together. We're both on the deed. Whatever, any of that stuff is going to be a major problem if that happens, and it does happen, folks. What about those who don't earn their keep? Exactly, right there. How are you going to get rid of these people, especially if they're on a legal document that says they have to be there? Big problems, big problems. So again, money. There is nowhere in Torah that says you're supposed to share money as a community. Guys, this is completely wrong. In fact, let's go down this road. The folks that are trying to convince you that it's the right thing to do to share your money are also probably going to be the ones that take it from you. Okay, the guys out there, the pastors, the elders, the shepherds, whatever they want to call them, who are telling you that we need to live an all-in community or an Acts community, are going to be also the ones that take the money from you when you decide to join. That should be a red flag right there. If that's not a red flag for you, there's something wrong with your flag-raising apparatus. Okay? You have a major issue. It's good to share your money with your neighbor and to care for the poor, the widows, and the orphans. But don't fall for the gimmick some people are preaching that says you must give the money to them so that they can share for the saints or community as a whole. Watch out. There be wolves amongst the sheep. Let's continue. Folks, it's as simple as this. Self-autonomy, individual autonomy. It's the definition of the quality of or state of being independent, free, and self-directing. Self-directing freedom, and especially moral independence. Freedom. That's what self-autonomy and individual autonomy mean. You need self-autonomy. You need individual autonomy. You need freedom. You need liberty. That's going to provide you success. That's going to provide the community success. But Zach, seems like you're preaching all against community. You're saying everything against community. Folks, there's a way to do this right. We're going to keep going. There's a way to do this right. Stick with me. I don't want to dash everyone's hopes, guys. There are ways to have a successful working community. You just have to avoid some of these pitfalls along the way. Some of the answers that you guys are coming up with around the campfire, and I'm seeing on Facebook, hey, I want to join a community. I want to find I've heard of such and such community. Let's go check them out. Let's see how they live. Maybe we can join them. I'm so hungry for fellowship. I'm all alone, Zach. I want to have community. I want to be with other like-minded believers. I get it. I totally understand it. And there are people coming out of the woodwork moving here and doing that with us. Not in this. We're not doing community like this. I guarantee you. I'm going to tell you how we're doing it. But I understand the desire for fellowship. I get it. I totally understand that. The wrong ways. So up until now, we've talked about some things to watch out for and to avoid. Now I want to give you some blueprints and real-world examples for success. Area saturation. This is the right way to do community. Buy your own place, or even rent. Doesn't matter. But buy your own place. Find other fellowships, seek them out, and coordinate and network with them. Find other like-minded people, get to know them, and then move there. You don't have to move on their property. You don't have to move on and share all your meals together. You don't have to go in and hold all things in common like some of these people are taking these verses and Acts out of context for. No, but you find a bunch of people, who think like you do, get to know them, visit them a few times, and then move there and begin to fellowship with them. Buy a piece of property in their area, close to their area, but it's your property. It's your piece of land. Move close to those people. And that's what we're doing here. It's absolutely what we're doing here. You keep your self-autonomy intact when you do this. You keep your freedom. You don't have to worry about a falling out or a change in legal status that's going to affect your property. You know what? There are certain people, that we fellowship with, that we get along with better than others. It's not like I hate them or they hate me or we argue and fight. It's just certain people we get along with better than others. And there's certain people you like being around with better than others. There's certain people you can bond with better than others. It's just the way it is. And But in a community, if you're not living face to face all day, every day, you don't have to worry about disagreements and arguments getting out of control and festering and growing. You don't have to worry about that. Because you know what? You're going home to your place tonight, and they're going home to their place tonight. And you can come back again in a couple days or a week and see them again, and there's no problem. Or you'll work out your differences. But you don't have to, sleep on it knowing that I'm going to wake up and see that person all over again the next day. There is strength in numbers. You can still be close to like-minded people, but not too close. Remember what Solomon said? Solomon says, don't put your foot in your neighbor's house every day lest he hate you. Obviously, Solomon had a neighbor that he didn't like very much, who was over all the time. Maybe. This is what we see in Torah. In Torah, we see self-autonomy and we see individual property ownership. We don't see people living in a commune environment with one person, prophet, pastor, elder, shepherd, apostle, managing your personal assets. So how do we live out the Acts community model? Obviously, these people in Acts that are doing something, what are they doing? Is it contradict Torah? If we take it the way some people are telling us, yeah, it does absolutely contradict Torah. But I don't think they're doing, I think I've made the point in this video that I don't think they're doing what some of these people say they're doing. What I think they're doing is they're looking around at the world around them and the material possessions that they've acquired and seeing amongst them that these possessions don't matter. They don't amount to anything. What only amounts to something is how I treat my neighbor and how I love God. And that's why I would highly recommend you guys out there going out and watching that video I put on my website a number of times, Lukewarm and Loving It. I posted it on Facebook, and I think Francis Chan does a very excellent job of conveying the idea that once you find the kingdom, nothing else matters. Here's a clip.
You see, the kingdom of heaven is not like the rich young ruler who said, man, I got my wealth. He's telling me to give it to the poor. I don't know, man. He went away sad. The kingdom of heaven is about a little man who jumps out of a tree and goes, man, I don't care about my stuff. What is the kingdom of heaven like? The kingdom of heaven is like a man who finds a treasure in a field, right? And he sees this treasure. It's so great that he covers it back up. And he goes, man, let me just get rid of everything else I have because I want that field so badly. He doesn't have to sit there and think about it and go, man, I don't know if it's worth it. It says, with great joy, you get it. You see that the treasure is that great that, I don't even have to think. This isn't compare. This isn't let me weigh it out, what's more valuable. With great joy, let me just sell everything I have and get this field. With great joy, did you ever picture Zacchaeus slowly climbing down the tree and going, all right, I guess I'll give some to the poor. I feel kind of guilty about it anyways. Or if I ripped you off, I'll pay you back. I don't see that. You just picture this little Danny DeVito guy going, woo, just jumping, and here's all my money, here you go. And anyone I ripped off, I don't care because I've got God. It's like this treasure that was so great. And this isn't about work salvation. It's not about, okay, if I work enough, then I'm suddenly on fire. No, I'm saying if you get it, the kingdom of heaven is a person who goes, whoa, you're kidding me. Okay, here's everything. I'm getting this treasure here. It's not about a person going, I don't know, that's pretty good. That's pretty good too. I don't know what I want. There's God, there's the world, there's God, I don't know. God says, you make me want to gag. So you're looking at me, okay, the maker of the world, and then you on this little planet, you're looking at this little house here and this little car and going, man, I don't know if I can give that up or retirement for a few years. And you comparing me, the creator, the one who made the whole world, who spoke it into existence. And you're going, I don't know if I can give up this little thing on this piece of dirt for him. He goes, that makes me sick. You make me want to gag. I just want to spit you out of my mouth. See, your riches have so blinded you that you think this stuff is good. You don't see it as dung. It's a big pile of crap. And you don't get it. You think it's actually good. It's all this great stuff. You've been blinded by it. He goes, and that just makes me sick. God looks and he goes, man, you're comparing me to this? You're wondering if I'm valuable enough? Man, the kingdom of heaven is a guy that just goes, duh. Are you kidding me? Let me just sell everything. It's about a guy that jumps out of the tree and goes, Forget it. I can have God. He goes, but these people that are lukewarm, that's just repulsive. That's just sick to me.
So do you see that this is not about possessions? It's not about material items anymore. It's about the kingdom. That's the only thing that matters in my brother and my God, and making sure that everything in my life reflects that. It's not about material wealth. And I think anyone who thinks that, but if they go the other direction and they think that, I have to give all my money to my rabbi, my pastor, my whoever, and let them manage it for me and just live destitute and at their control, that's just crazy too. That's not what these people are doing, and it's not what we find in Torah. So how are we building community here? Well, just some real world examples. I've made some very good friends with a couple realtors in town, and when people contact me through my ministry or whatever, and they want to know if there's property for sale, absolutely there's property for sale. And I put them in touch with a couple realtors in this area. See, it's weird out in this area. A lot of real estate agents, a lot of real estate companies don't put properties on the MLS database. And so you don't find properties that are for sale, even though there are actually properties for sale in the area. You have to come out here and network and meet with people and find out where these properties are, because properties that are for sale aren't necessarily on the MLS database. So you can go to a real estate website, any real estate website, and search for properties in the area, and you won't see all of them. And so what we're doing here is we're putting people into contact with real estate agents who know these properties, who are listed on the MLS, but who know the ones that aren't, and we're trying to move people to the area so that we can fellowship together, build homesteads in the area, and come together for worship and the feast days, and have that fellowship that other people wouldn't normally have, living out amongst some of these cities where fellowship is rare. And so we're trying to area saturate. And that's what the Mennonites did in this area. There's a very large Mennonite population in the area. And basically they moved in. There was a couple that moved in, a number of Mennonites who moved into the area, and they put the word out to other Mennonites. Hey, we have land here. We'll help you get started here. We'll help you build a homestead. We'll help you get an industry and start a business. And before you know it, there's a whole bunch of Mennonites who live in this area, and they have stores, they have businesses, they have manufacturing here, and they are prospering here. They have a really good core community here, and they have a very good schooling community for their children here that's protected from influences of the outside world. And believe it or not, people on the Hebrew roots, we have a lot in common with them, even though they probably think we're crazy. But either way, it doesn't matter. They did the exact same thing. They have a community here where they can come together for worship and come together for their holidays and things like that. And so what I'm telling you what works is doing the exact same thing. Let me give you another example. Wycliffe Bible Translators. My family has a deep connection with them. My in-laws spent 30 years with Wycliffe Bible Translators. My wife spent 10 years and graduated high school in Papua New Guinea. They were up in the highlands in a place called Unkarumpa. It was a community up there. And a community center was run by Wycliffe Bible Translators, and that community was self-autonomous. It had incorporated individual liberty into that community. Now, it was all owned by Wycliffe Bible Translators, but when a missionary left to go back to the States after his time was completed or, finished his assignment, then he would sell his house to another missionary, and you could build equity in it, you could make improvements on it, but you know what? You went home every day to your house. It wasn't a communal setting like communistic government. No, you were paid a salary based on, the support that came in from your supporters, and, it was yours. You managed that yourself. The ministry didn't do that for you. And you maintained your own self-autonomy and liberty. And there's an example, a very good example. And a lot of ministries like Wycliffe, a long-standing ministry, operate the same way. That they still put the self-autonomy and the individual liberty upon the individual. And that's good. That's what works. Now, every system has problems. You have issues, conflicts and things like that arise, and they'll tell you that there was things that arose, but it wasn't catastrophic. And for the most part, it was smooth sailing. They spent 10 years over there, and my wife graduated high school, and after they graduated high school, they moved back home to California so she could go to college. And so they spent their time there, but it was a good time. It was a system that worked. And so I think if you can develop a system where you live amongst people who can maintain their own ownership, self-ownership, have their own property, have their own self-autonomy, have their own liberty, and you do not try to oppress them, then I think you will, and not have a double standard amongst people, then you will have a good community that will work. But you need to maintain those things and avoid some of the pitfalls that I've described in here and what some of these other people are doing. It's not going to work if you do that. If you go down some of those roads, you're going to have some serious issues. Anyway, so there's some real-world examples. Examples of the Mennonites, examples of Wycliffe, examples of what we're doing here. There are people moving into the area. And I'll give you another example. You know, when we come together with our neighbors, there was just the other day, we went to go help a neighbor who's building a house about 10 miles away, 15 miles away. Went over there and helped him. He's building a house for another friend of his, and he needed some help. And so we was like, you know what, we're going to go over there and help him, because as soon as he gets done with that house, he's going to be starting on another house that his family and another family are going to be moving into on some property. And we're like, you know what, we're going to go over and help this guy out because it's going to help him, and I'm coming together for my neighbor because he needs help. That's what community is. But you know what? It's still his house. It's still his land. It's still his area. They're going to be doing it, and this is mine. We don't live together. I don't see them every day. But you know what? When they need help, I'm going to go help them. There was my immediate neighbor. You've seen him in probably some other videos. Matt, he had some issues where he needed to have help on one of his roofs. He needed some help putting a roof on his new barn / house. And we all went over there and helped him with the trusses and helped him with the roofing. And we did all that together. That's community coming together to help our neighbor. But I don't have to see him every day. I don't have to eat dinner with him every day. And I think if you did that, you would have problems arise, just like I've described in this video. But, you know, when their neighbors need help, we come together to help them. And that's what true Torah is. That's what loving your neighbor is. When they need help, coming together and helping them, giving them a helping hand. And that's something, you know, that we can do, you know, getting the young men together in the community to come over and do some manual labor and get a job done. That's a real world example of how real community, Torah-based community can work. Guys, I'm telling you right now, there's some wolves out there, and you need to be careful because they're pushing some agendas, they're pushing some models that are not going to work, and all it's going to do is cause you some major heartache, and you're going to end up leaving that area. But here's the deal: when someone gives you this pitch, all you need to tell them is ask them, what's your turnover rate in your community? How many people in your community are originally the ones who started out that community? If the number is low or zero, run. What's the turnover rate? That's the question you need to ask. Because if the turnover rate's high, there's something wrong there. And I'm going to submit to you the reason the turnover rate's high for these communities that are out there is because they're not going. They're basically taking some of the verses in Acts and taking them out of context and pushing a system that's going to benefit only them and their family. Folks, it can be a painful process. It was a painful process for me and my family. We have some of this experience. And I'm telling you right now to avoid these things. If you want to go ahead and do that, you want to try your luck at that, roll the dice. Go ahead, take your chances. But I'm telling you right now, I would avoid some of these communities out there. And not only that, but some of these people are teaching some things that are just completely off the wall. And usually that should be a red flag to you anyway. When you find out what some of these people are teaching, that should be red flags also. So anyway, people have been asking me a lot about this. What's up with community, Zach? How do we do community? There's how I think you do it. And there's how I think you do it according to Scripture. You maintain your self-autonomy. You maintain your individual liberty. And you go forth and you help and love your neighbor and you love God at the same time. That's how I suppose and propose you do it. That's how I've seen other people do it. And that's how I'm going to do it. All right, we'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.